In modern Russia, about people go missing every year, including children. They are not found. Hear a story about perverts who are released after being treated in psychiatric clinics. Maniacs live among us, and everyone should know the psychological portrait of a criminal. Perhaps someday it will help save someone's life. At the beginning of February 2019, the news spread through the media in one of the hospitals in Chelyabinsk. A maniac-ripper worked as a therapist, who had been undergoing treatment in a psychiatric clinic for 10 years. The shock of many was even caused not by the fact that a person with such a past was hired, the diploma was fake, but by the fact that the declared insane cannibal was discharged from the hospital. Let's see how people who have committed violent crimes come out after compulsory treatment. This story is so cinematic that few believed in it before it was confirmed by the investigative committee. 32-year-old therapist Boris Kondrashin was in good standing at the city clinical hospital No. 11 of Chelyabinsk. He even went for a promotion, until a former classmate signed up for an appointment. It was she who recognized the young doctor as the man who, in 2000, dealt with a school friend with particular cruelty. Kondrashin not only took the life of a teenager, he dismembered his corpse and drank the blood. He explained to the investigators, he made a sacrifice to the dark forces. The student was diagnosed with schizophrenia and sent for compulsory treatment. And 10 years later, they decided, the patient is in stable remission, he can be released. 8 years later, he was able to get a job in a hospital with a fake GG diploma. He worked, however, not for long, just over a month. Now a pseudo-doctor has been arrested on suspicion of drug possession and the use of a forged diploma. He will again have to undergo a forensic psychiatric examination, and then, possibly, go for treatment. Kondrashin is far from the only one who was given a chance in quotation marks. Alexander Spasivtsev is considered one of the most brutal serial killers, on account of his at least 20 victims. And these are only those cases for which evidence has been collected. 60 more have not been proven. He killed girls with particular cruelty, in some cases forced them to eat the flesh of previous victims. The mother and sister helped the maniac to lure the women home and get rid of the remains. Spasivtsev was sent to psychiatric hospitals twice, but both times in his condition they saw a stable remission and was released. By the way, the sister was not brought to justice at all, and the mother, after serving 10 years for complicity, is now at large. Only after the discovery of a female torso without arms and legs in Spasivtsev's apartment, the maniac was sent for treatment for a long time. He has been in the Volgograd psychiatric hospital of a special type with intensive supervision since 1998. But almost every year there are rumors that the Novokuznetsk cannibal was discharged. The hospital itself refused to provide information about the patient Spasivtsev, citing medical confidentiality. However, according to a source in the power structures of Novokuznetsk, the maniac is still being treated. Moreover, even if he is recognized as recovered, he will immediately go to serve his sentence in a colony. In addition to the murders, he was accused of organizing an illegal armed group. If serial killers have almost no chance of being discharged, then those who have the blood of one victim on their hands can get out of a mental hospital pretty quickly. On September 19, 2017, a mentally ill Astrakhan man attacked his sister and niece. The girl died on the spot from her injuries. It quickly became known, only 2 months ago, he left a psychiatric clinic, where he was treated for 5 years after committing a similar crime. In July 2011, a mentally ill person stabbed a customer in a store more than 20 times. Now the doctor who took the initiative to transfer this patient to outpatient treatment is accused of negligence. A 13-year-old resident of the village of Lysevo in the Voronezh region spent 2 years in a psychiatric clinic after the murder of a classmate. Is it a lot or a little? The girl's mother Galina Morozova, surname has been changed, says, this is nothing. Jenny disappeared on April 13, 2013. The day after lunch, the girl called her mother, said that she was late for the school bus, so she would go back on foot. But I never made it home. The body was found in a local river a few days later. She was strangled, a stone was tied to her feet. The last Zhenya was seen by his classmate Ivan. They were returning from school together. The teenager immediately joined the search for the missing. Together with the villagers and rescuers, he combed the ravines, actively helped the police. I even remembered that on the day Zhenya met with a local guy. Only later did it become clear, the teenager was confusing the police. He was the real killer. He carried some nonsense to the investigators, that he always wanted to unravel the crimes himself, that they are looking for murderers in the movies quickly and he wanted to know if it would be so easy in real life, recalls Galina Ivanovna, the mother of the murdered woman, in a conversation. Reprisals only said that my Zhenya had allegedly insulted his mother. I tried to find out, with what word, but he could not remember it. At the trial, the student sat in silence. And his mother tried to convince everyone that her son was framed. Allegedly, some important officials forced him to drag the blonde Zhenya into the thickets by the river. This version was also voiced by the schoolboy to the police. Most likely, because of these delusional ideas, he was sent for a psychiatric examination. The official conclusion, at the time of the murder, Ivan was insane. But how can this be? Now we are sane, but 5 minutes later, no longer? Asks the mother of the deceased. Galina Ivanovna says, when she heard that the murderer of her daughter would be sent to a psychiatric hospital instead of a colony, she sobbed for a long time. But she protested nothing, the tragedy left no strength. Yes, and everyone assured me that this was the same prison, only within the walls of the hospital, that he would not be released from there for another 5 years. And 2 years later I found out that Ivan was released. It seems like he even found a bride for himself in this hospital. Now he is married, lives in Voronezh. And my daughter will never wear a wedding dress. In Russia, there are 4 types of compulsory treatment: outpatient, general hospital, in fact, an ordinary psychiatric hospital, specialized type hospital and specialized type hospital with intensive observation. The latter are only 7, all located in the Western European part of Russia. It contains those whose actions pose a particular danger to society. For example, repeated escapes from other institutions, attacks on staff. In addition, it is in hospitals with intensive supervision that the offenders, we have no right to call them criminals, are identified, accused of a series of rapes or murders after the initial compulsory treatment, are under constant video surveillance. The doors in the wards are iron, with small windows, like in the cells. Along the perimeter these special hospitals are surrounded by several walls with barbed wire, militarized guards are on duty everywhere. In fact, this is the same prison, but with a medical bias, explains Alexei Bobkov, candidate of medical sciences, an employee of the Department of Psychiatry and Narcology of the Faculty of Advanced Training at Rostov State Medical University. It is important to understand, only the court has the right to send a person for compulsory treatment. He can also write out it. But the medical commission must apply for a change in the regime. These are carried out every 6 months, regardless of which institution the patient is being treated in. The likelihood that someone will be sent home who has committed, for example, several murders with acts of cannibalism, is negligible. But a commission for such a patient is assembled every 6 months. It includes at least 3 psychiatrists, including the head of the department. And the attending physician, specifies Bobkov. The psychiatrist admits, there are no clear criteria. Everything is decided on an individual basis. Before entering the commission, the patient is sent for examinations, experimental psychological, laboratory, instrumental. Then he is called for a psychiatric examination. How does this happen? The patient sits in front of the doctors and answers their questions. We seem to be just talking to a person. But during this conversation, a specialist can identify many symptoms of the disease. Everything is important here: how the patient answers questions, where he looks, how he moves. To cheat the commission, you need to be at least a psychiatrist. Indeed, in addition to the answers, we pay attention to gestures, pupil reaction, voice intonation. It's almost impossible to change these parameters. The results of the psychiatric examination are discussed collegially. 2/3 of the commission must vote in favor of it. Then the verdict is sent to the court, and the judge decides whether to release the person under outpatient supervision or leave him in the hospital, the specialist says. By the way, the court does not always listen to doctors' arguments. But indulgences are rare. More often the regime, on the contrary, is toughened up or left the same. The minimum period after which they can be discharged is 4 to 5 years. Although there are exceptions. Sometimes a person is transferred to outpatient observation after 2 years, but, as a rule, only if the patient's personality does not cause any complaints, and he committed the crime in an acute psychotic state. For example, we had a patient who attacked his sister in a state of acute psychosis. Then he realized the depth of the tragedy, immediately agreed to take medications. Moreover, he almost approached the nurses himself for pills. He maintained a warm relationship with his mother. He had previously worked and expressed a desire to continue working in the future, did not suffer from alcoholism, drug addiction. We recommended him for transfer in 2 years. However, there are only a few such patients, a maximum of 2 people a year, says the doctor. An important nuance, from institutions of a special type of patients, on the street, no one writes up. They are transferred one step below, to a general hospital. And from there they can be sent for outpatient compulsory treatment. It is at this stage that problems arise. The patient should regularly, once every 1.5 to 2 weeks, visit a psychiatrist. If he does not, the police officers search for him and bring him to the polyclinic. But does anyone really think that the operational departments are beginning to look for the mentally ill at our first request? No, of course, says Alexei Bobkov. Plus, a person can simply go to another city. After all, he is not restricted in movement. The search, until they are found, will take several weeks, or even months. During this time, without taking medications and monitoring, the patient's condition may deteriorate sharply. In addition, a patient, especially from a rural area, is not always able to easily get a prescription. And without them, drugs for this category of patients are not dispensed. The system of outpatient psychiatric care, especially in the outback, is not developed. In many areas there are no psychiatrists. To get a prescription, you need to go to the next one. And then the bus does not go, then there is no money for travel, then the doctor is on the road. I studied statistics on repeat homicides among patients with schizophrenia. Patients living in rural areas committed them more often, Bobkov cites. By the way, his Ph.D. thesis was devoted to the problem of repeated murders after compulsory treatment. The doctor admits, transferring the patient to outpatient observation, even with regular intake of drugs, no one guarantees that an exacerbation will not happen. Usually this condition develops for weeks. But sometimes, literally in a matter of seconds. A blow to the head, a stressful situation, even poisoning can provoke. Another problem, a person who returns home after treatment needs to get a job, because he is not entitled to a disability. And here the question arises, is the employer able to understand that his potential employee has committed, for example, murder? According to Bobkov, no. When a patient is transferred from inpatient treatment to outpatient treatment, the clinic transfers all information about him to the district psychiatrist and the police. That is, both law enforcement and the psychiatric service know what the person was accused of. However, no one will disclose this information to the employer. A certificate from a psychiatrist will say that the person is under observation. And then if it is a certificate from a district psychiatrist, and not from a private one. From the point of view of the law, the biography of a former patient of a psychiatric clinic is completely clean. Since he is exempt from criminal liability, there is a dash in the criminal record column. Bobkov notes that his former patients often find jobs, but almost always in low-skilled jobs. Some trade in the markets, work at construction sites, they can go through a factory. Although there are exceptions. So, one patient went into private business, he opened an individual entrepreneur, went to Moscow, hired a team of workers and fulfilled orders quite well. However, now he is back to us returned, got into a fight, he was accused of hooliganism. Despite all of the above, the doctor assures, you should not be afraid of those who have undergone treatment. After all, there are much more healthy criminals. We compared statistics on serious crimes, only 10% were committed by patients. Another thing is that the crimes of which people with mental disabilities are accused are so ridiculous or bloody that they are always hurt. In general, because of such perverts, it is necessary to change the criminal code. What do you, viewers of our channel, think about this? Write in the comments. And also do not forget to share this video on your social networks, press the subscribe button and the bell for notifications about new films. Please switch to other videos that you currently see in the end screens.